Hi there, and welcome to the first of these Recovery Friday meetings that we're going to do. As I say, Recovery Friday recordings. Um, the reason for setting up these recordings was because we really wanted to take everything we've done with Recovery Now and to add to that. Recovery Now Radio with the Reaching Out show with Let's Recover Together has reached a lot of people, and it's been a really important tool in connecting with lots of people from around the world. But we thought if we create a weekly video every Friday that can take really important topics about recovery that are relevant to people's lives right now, and it can kind of condense those, and we can go into much greater depth and talk about some really important stuff. So today, we're kind of checking in with you to talk about feelings and to talk about examining those feelings, about being able to identify how we're actually feeling, and being able to recognize sometimes that we're not feeling the way others would like us to feel. Why is that important? Okay, well, this is the essence of addiction itself. All people who are struggling with addiction are to some degree struggling with the inability to feel, the inability to process feelings, the inability to be able to own feelings or to express feelings, to say, here is actually how I'm feeling. Often people who have found that they have difficulties with drugs, with alcohol, with addictive behaviour, they've grown up in circumstances, perhaps in families, perhaps in social situations, where it wasn't okay to say how we feel. It wasn't okay to be open. We're talking about feelings, and the language of feelings is something that is considered to be shameful or embarrassing or something that can be emotionally punished. A child who says, I feel bad, or I feel sad, or I feel angry, can be told to be quiet, dismissed, or perhaps even punished in some way, because that child's needs present a challenge to the family structure and to the needs of the dysfunctional needs of parents or other family members. In other circumstances, more societally, we wind up buying into myths about feelings, buying into popular kind of dogmas about feelings. Boys don't cry, or it's better just to kind of toughen up and bottle those feelings away. While in the opposite way of seeing things, what we find when we come into recovery is that a crucial part of toughening up, of becoming a survivor, not a victim, is owning feelings and having the right to say, actually, I don't feel happy about that, or I don't really want that in my life, or that has upset me. And it's when those feelings are denied, when we're not allowed to articulate how we feel, or when we find it difficult to articulate how we feel in an appropriate way, that we become much more susceptible to a relapse. So today we're going to just talk about owning feelings and being able to identify, well, how am I actually feeling, really? Feelings manifest themselves in the body. They're a physical sensation. Think about when you felt angry. Where did you feel it in your body? Was it in your shoulders? Was it in the pit of your stomach? Was it in your jaw? Our feelings are actually embedded physically within us. When we feel nervous, it's a feeling often in the stomach, or an apprehension. Our nervous system is getting ready to get us to run away from a threat. Very often when I've worked with clients who've come directly into recovery from an addiction, the question about, well, how do you feel about that? It provokes a response of uncertainty. I genuinely have no idea how I feel about that. And often that's not exactly the case. Often the person does know on a deeper level how they feel. They can sense it within their body. They can feel the anger. They can feel the discomfort. They can feel the loss of the sadness. What they're really saying is, I don't know whether it's okay for me to tell you how I feel, or I don't know if I have permission to say how I feel, or I don't know the language of expressing how I feel. That has been there's been a disruption there. So it might be interesting now for you to pause, if you're of the journaling persuasion, if you like to journal, right, to pause and ask yourself some key questions. The first might be, how do I feel today? What feelings have been coming up for me today? Do I feel, how did I feel this morning? How did I feel this afternoon? If it's the evening, how do I feel this evening? Have my feelings changed throughout the day? And if so, what changes did that bring about in my day-to-day experience of life? You might be able to ask yourself, do I find it easy to feel? Do I find it difficult to feel? Do I find it easy to articulate how I feel? Is it easy for me to tell others how I feel? If it's not easy for me to tell others how I feel, what barriers might there be in the way for me saying to others how I feel? Are there some people who's easier to articulate how I feel to than others? Are there some times when it's easier to talk about how I feel? This is really, really important, and perhaps overall we can maybe give ourselves a rating, one being, I find it very, very difficult to articulate to myself how I feel and even to others. To a 10 being, I have no problems. I really connected with those feelings, which is great. If you are, that's fantastic. And we can spend more and more time checking in with those feelings. The feelings are rarely wrong. They might be interpreted incorrectly, for want of a better word, by us. We might find it difficult to understand what the feelings are telling us or showing us, but they're rarely wrong. And they're rarely wrong because the nervous system is a very clever thing. It can produce all sorts of interesting results. If you were in a situation where you were observing a crime, perhaps, or something that was happening there, a person in a shop stealing a thing that didn't belong to you. Very often it's easy to see things in others that the mind takes a while to catch up with. So you perceive something as somebody who's acting in a shifty way, and you think, that's suspicious. The mind says, yeah, but I don't know why it is, because our conscious thinking is much, much slower. It has to ponder over things and consider things and dissect things and analyze things. The gut, much, much quicker. And that's where the feeling happens. The gut says, something not right about this. And that's what we call intuition. And it's not some sort of mystic power. It's simply the nervous system acting quicker than the conscious mind can process things. Later on, as we go away and we think about the person we saw in the shop who was putting something under their coat or something like that, we might think, oh, yeah, right, I now know what it is I saw there. But because we're in a society that really insists that we focus on rational thought, which is, a good thing. We're not kind of suggesting here we should be irrational and have wild prejudices about people. But because we're in a society that focuses on rational thought and mental processing and stopping to consider things and weighing things up and all this kind of stuff, good stuff that we learn in schools, it becomes slightly harder for us to listen to that gut instinct, that which is part of the language of feeling. It goes much deeper than that. many people have grown up, as previously mentioned, being discouraged from listening to the language of feelings, being told, don't be silly, that must be a nonsense, don't bring that up, be quiet. Having their right to have their view of the world, to be able to articulate their view of the world, snuffed out. And this means that we're encouraged not to trust our feelings. Our feelings are telling us something. Our feelings are all only really just a kind of a conversation between the mind and the body. They are messages within the nervous system shooting back and forth saying, you need to do something about that. A person has overstepped the boundary with us, we feel angry, and that's the body's quite primeval way of saying, push the boundary back, make sure that person steps back over the line. And in less sophisticated times, we might have snarled and shouted at them. But now in recovery, we're about managing boundary in a more appropriate way. Often when, particularly with anger, we're not allowed to articulate whether we're angry about something, and we feel hurt by others or something being taken from us by others. That anger then begins to fester. That anger, which is how our voice would manifest itself, projecting outwards, saying a truth, you have done a bad thing, I want you to stop doing the bad thing and step back over the line. When that is shoved back down inside, because someone says, you mustn't say that, be quiet, shush, no one wants to hear that. That festers, and this is a huge part of where this phenomenon of depression emerges from, how we see depression, which is more than simply unhappiness. It is the absence of voice, the absence of purpose, the absence of a sense of meaning in life. If I can't be heard, so the mindset thinks, if I can't be heard, what is the point? This is where kind of a sense of hopelessness emerges from. So, what we're about here in this very short video is about identifying and connecting with feelings and looking at what the feelings are trying to say to us and making sure that we are able to identify them. Again, to people who journal, if you don't journal, it's a really, really great practice to get into, and I'll do another video on that perhaps in the next few weeks. But using journaling as a tool is really, really important, because it's a way of watching and of being able to observe yourself and being able to check in with yourself and being able to see what it is you're really feeling and what it is yesterday or the day before you were really feeling. It's a great way of being able to say, I feel this one thing rather a lot. I'm constantly feeling this thing. I've got the evidence there. Put me down. What's that mean? Do something about that. Can we do something about that? Are we happy with that? Do we want to change? So use that tool, and it's a great way of just keeping feelings that normally slip under the radar, that normally do their own thing behind the curtain, keeping those feelings out from the unconscious processing that we always do into conscious thought. And when we can see things, we can act on them. What we can see, we can change. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us on this first ever Recovery Friday. And I wish you a really, really peaceful and restful weekend. And I wish for all of you a profound and beautiful recovery experience. So let's keep coming back and let's recover together. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.